And the administration cannot turn a blind eye to the regime's destabilizing role in the region. From propping up Assad in Syria to supporting the overthrow of a U.S. partner in Yemen, to supplying rockets to Hamas and Hezbollah, the IRGC is behind much of the turmoil that we see in the region.
Back now on Newsmax Prime, as we mentioned and discussed before the break, the National Council of Resistance for Iran is holding that solidarity event tomorrow in Paris, with many speaking out against the current Iranian regime. This as the deadline on that nuclear deal quickly approaches, and we're learning the nuclear deal is creating some new and heretofore unexpected alliances. For more, we are joined via Skype from Paris by Ambassador James Woolsey, the former Director of Central Intelligence, now the Chairman of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, who will be attending that aforementioned event. Ambassador, always great to have you here on Newsmax Prime.
Thanks a lot, JD. I think they may even let me yak for a minute or two rather than just attending. And it's a bunch of people who are interested in moving toward democracy in Iran. So I'm sure very unpopular with the Iranian government.
And speaking of that Iranian government, it is not exactly popular in Saudi Arabia. There is an interesting dynamic at work with Saudi Arabia and Israel, and really the perception of the Saudi people. Can you tell us more about that?
Interesting. There was a poll I just saw this morning. It's come out within the last day or two, I think, from IDC. As I remember it, it's 18% of the Saudi people think that their principal enemy in the world is Israel. 3 times that, 53% think Iran is their principal enemy. 53% of Saudis. That's an interesting poll.
It is interesting, especially against the backdrop of private discussions, as I understand, between Israel and the Saudis. What can you tell us about that?
I just saw that in the press this morning too. General Heshki, I think, a retired Saudi general, has been meeting for the last year plus with former Israeli ambassador in the U.S., Dor Gold, talking about a number of matters, apparently. And they were in public, I think, within the last few days, shook hands on camera in public. There's a lot of interesting things taking place in the Mideast these days.
So, mindful of this development, what does it mean for the regime in Iran, which apparently still enjoys the full support of our president when it comes to this nuclear deal?
Well, I'm really sorry that that's the case. I would hope that we would get out of those talks immediately. We have no business in them. There's no point in negotiating with someone who wants to destroy you, as Khamenei has said a number of times about both the United States and Israel. He is in the world of theocratic, totalitarian, genocidal maniacs, and there's absolutely no reason for us to be negotiating with him. We ought instead to be preparing ourselves, should it prove necessary, for using force against Iran.
So that last bit of discussion there, Jim, preparing ourselves to use force if necessary. What do you think is going to happen? Because this president, even though he sent 400 more, quote, advisors into Iraq again, seems very, very reluctant to even contemplate engaging the Iranians. So what is going to happen? Will Israel end up taking the lead, perhaps? And could we even publicly mention that Israel-Saudi coalition coming together?
I don't want to speculate on that. There's just too much uncertainty, and the Middle East is sufficiently unpredictable. But I do think those are very interesting developments, and I think that anything like this nuclear agreement that is being discussed with Iran now, I think would be a terrible idea and a very, very big disadvantage to the United States and all peace-loving countries that have an interest in the Middle East. The agreement means that the Iranians will very soon, I believe, have a nuclear weapon, months to a few years, not many years. And once they do, the whole character of the Middle East changes. A number of other countries work hard to get nuclear weapons. Iran starts intimidating even more of its neighbors to let it run things than it does now, and so on and so on.
Jim, in an act of self-deprecation, you said that you might get a chance to, quote, yak tomorrow. Give us a preview of what you're going to tell the delegates to this conference in Paris.
I'm going to talk substantially about the nuclear problem, how Iran is not limiting itself in any way, how I think that is impermissible and we should withdraw from the talks. The negotiations can lead nowhere good under the present circumstances. And I think that any chance of a real arms limitation agreement with the mullahs is as close to zero as human probabilities get.
Jim, we began discussing Israel and the Saudis. There was another report earlier this week that Israel may have been behind a computer virus in the hotels used during those Iranian nuclear talks. Have you heard about that, and what's your take on it? 30 seconds.
No, I don't know. I have no information about that at all, but pretty much all countries who are involved or affected by what Iran is doing would have to, if they're loyal to their country. All intelligence officials would be trying to get information about this negotiation. It's a terrible thing, I think, for the United States and Israel, who have been told that they're going to be destroyed by the current Iranian government again and again and again.
And on that note, Jim, we will thank you for your time. Ambassador James Woolsey here on Newsmax Prime.